Hey guys, Luton here. So today I'm just doing a bit of a informal post-Scriptum weekend testing discuss with two of the developers, Bry and also Scrub, and they're going to be answering some of the questions that I have, but I'm also just giving my feedback from the weekend. So it's a bit of a Q&A and also feedback session, but I figured it would be a good idea to just record this so that you guys can hear their responses and just understand a little bit more of what's going on. So good morning guys, how you doing?
Hey, good morning. I'm well.
Pretty good.
Let's just jump straight into it then, and we'll just get rattling through. So before we get to feedback, I think one important thing to cover is just optimization and the frame stability. Scrub went into a little bit of detail about this when we were talking about some of the areas of trees and foliage, but do you guys want to just maybe put people in the picture where you are with that and what the plan is? And you know, I'm sure you guys have seen people's feedback as well about that. Some people with lower spec rigs saying that, you know, they were having a hard time getting frames and all this kind of stuff. What's your kind of end goal, and what's your, I guess, realistic expectations of what that's going to be like when you get further forward?
Well, yeah, it was a bit of a problem for the low-end rigs, but I mean, not only, it was also a problem for the mid-end, even sometimes high-end. So we know what the problem is. We were not completely done with the actual optimization. We were halfway through, and also we've made a few mistakes in how we've laid down some foliage, you know, some values where you switch from one tree model to another. So the poly count, the number of triangles in scenes were like just mad from time to time, but that's not for you guys as a player. It was a big problem because that was the first time you played the game, but to fix, it's not going to be a massive task. We are working on it right now. I mean, even as I speak, I'm optimizing the map Driel. So this is something we are working on to ease a bit on the GPU. It was very heavy for all those GPU during the weekend. So I think we are aiming for the same kind of performance than you had in squad in A11, and there is nothing worrying us too much at the moment. We should be able to achieve that for the next time.
I think for me personally, my performance overall was pretty decent. The only time where I found it sort of spiked up really was where things would get very, very intense, or people would chuck in like tons and tons of smoke grenades, or when you were in like, some forests, you definitely felt it.
The tank exploding was also going crazy. So it depends on the maps. There are a few maps that were performing overall better than others, but I have personally a very strong rig and my frames were not where they should have been. I have a 1080 Ti and a very powerful CPU and a lot of RAM, and I should have got more FPS. So it's not like we're not ignoring it. We know what the problem is and we are actively working on it now.
Yeah, for sure. So let's get into actually feedback about some of the bits and pieces, because that's obviously the main reason why we're talking today. I guess the first one I'll go to was actually one I was going to talk about later, but I think I'm going to go straight to it. Damage issues when shooting at enemy players. Now, I had some contentious moments where I wasn't quite sure whether I got onto target, and sometimes it's really hard to tell because you're at a distance and you're only iron sighted, so it can be really hard, even when watching it back or if you've recorded your gameplay, to see whether or not you've actually hit that guy. But there were several times whilst I was playing where I 100% was actually making contact with people, often at pretty close range, and just flat out going, what the crap happened there? Like, that guy should have gone down. There was several. One, I remember there was a guy, he was like 5 meters away, and he was prone. I shot him in the head and there was blood everywhere. Bam, he just like one hit me with like no problem at all. And I actually saw Devil Dog actually had, because one of my guys linked it to me, where there was a guy in a window and Devil Dog like shot him, and the guy's like in a little rectangular window, chest front and center, and he snipes him in the chest and the guy just returns fire. He gets him in the end, but nonetheless, I had a similar thing where there was a guy in a window, and when we watched it back frame by frame, definitely made contact. And again, I did clip him, and it was very difficult to tell where I shot him. It looked like it was kind of in the neck shoulder region. So can you explain about how the damage models work on different parts of the body for people? And also, is there anything you guys are aware of where sometimes it either, I guess, doesn't connect, or it somehow doesn't register the hits to enemy? Because for sure, sometimes, like I say, it can be very difficult to tell whether or not you actually got the round in, and sometimes when you play it back, it looked like you did, but actually you were actually missing. There was a few times where I was sure that I'd hit. When I watched it back, no, actually it just went kind of just over the guy. So can you talk a little bit about the damage model for infantry, and also is there anything you guys are aware of or that you want to look into around these kind of where it seems like a dead cert that guy should have gone down and did not?
Well, the actual problem is, I don't know if you had that feeling in the recent internal playtest, not the one we had this weekend, but the one we have internally with our playtesters. I'm not sure you've experienced that problem, and because when I hit someone in those internal playtests, usually the guy goes down, or I know where the guy was hit. So I think during the weekend it was mostly based on the server performance and the server health. So there is that thing that is tick per second, and that thing is basically how much information you get per second from the server to you and back to the server. And that, I think, is sometimes the server were actually struggling with that, and the health of the server was quite low, so that the communication in between the server and your client wasn't really accurate.
But if you're seeing, for example, like if you're actually making contact and it's physically displaying like blood coming out of a guy, surely that should note that you've actually made contact, because surely it's registering the fact that your round has made contact with another target. So is that not suggesting that, you've made a connection and it should register that?
I'm not sure how the splash showing is registered, if it's something on the client side or if it's something on the server side. I'm not the coder.
I think you can make contact with it, but whether that is working at the same time as the damage recognition, I'm not entirely sure.
In any way, is the damage model itself and the way bullets works and the way bullets kills people. It's been tested a lot internally, and the way it reacts is fine. So my guess at the moment is, for me, I think it's server health, and I can't be sure of it because I'm not the guy doing it.
Okay, that's fine.
Most servers were fine, but there were a few either providers or communities that either their end wasn't strong enough, or there was an issue somewhere that was causing.
It was very heavy on the CPU.
Can you just talk a little about the damage model for the infantry? For example, like again, sometimes I'd shot a person in the head and they seem to be able to like turn around and engage me. So some of my guys were speculating like, well, maybe that's their helmet, and so you need to actually get more than one shot to the head, or is it very specific on parts of the body, or is it any body contact, or is it distance related? Can you just elaborate on that for people?
It is based on the type of bullet you are shooting. So if you shoot a bolt action rifle bullet, it's the velocity and the caliber is quite big, so it's not like a pistol like in every other game out there. If you go headshot, usually it should be black screen. So I would think it's a netcode issue right there.
But also, like I said, there was a couple of shots I had where I kind of looked like I was kind of just clipping a guy's shoulder or in the upper body region. Is there a difference between, say, like a direct chest hit or
there is
whether you clip?
Chest, legs, arms, hands, and head, if I'm not mistaken. And if you shoot a Core 98 or a Lee Enfield straight to the chest, you may not kill the guy instantly, but he's going to die in the next 2 or 3 seconds based on how far you were from the guy.
Sure. And also there's a few kills I had which were like penetration shots, like through wooden structures or anything. Does that reduce the damage there at all, or?
Not too much, unless it's concrete, but if it's wood, a Core 98 bullet would go straight through without asking questions.
Cool. Okay. Let's talk then about the server stability. That was definitely one thing, and you just kind of alluded to it a little bit there. But can you just sort of, again, is that something which you think will be an ongoing problem, or you think that once you get to some further builds of the game, the kind of rubber banding that we would see, and again, maybe some of those, netcode issues in terms of registering damage and so on, do you think that will get ironed out just as future builds go because they're going to be less intensive on the servers?
Yeah, I think we'll have a clearer idea of where we are during the next playtest, because this playtest was almost our trial by fire, because this is the first time we had so many people testing our game with different type of computers. So you had like AMDs and NVIDIA's, Intel, and so on. So we had a very broad range of feedback during the weekend, so we can analyze those profiles and try to figure where the issue is. I believe by the next playtest we'll have a better idea.
Okay, that's cool. A couple of other things, just server related. One thing, now obviously the rounds, there was an issue with some of the rounds rolling over constantly, and that was an issue where you get to the end of the round and it wouldn't roll over, so it would often make it difficult to, you could join in and you see, oh, we're near the end of the round, but you don't really want to stick around because well, it's going to just we're going to have to go back out anyway, so you'd have to leave and find a new one. Obviously, that's going to get fixed. That's not really anything that
it is already fixed.
Yeah,
it is. It's actually a very silly problem. We couldn't notice it before the playtest, because usually when we do internal playtests, we do one round, maybe two, and then we go off to something else. And this bug is only happening in one configuration. So when the attacker win every flags, you know that every time you capture a flag, you add some time on top of your actual timer. And basically what happens is when you capture the last flag, you had time on top. So it's like you have to wait for the entire cooldown to finish. So it could be 30 minutes, it could be an hour.
Makes
so
sense.
We just couldn't see that one until now. So it's a silly one. It is fixed.
Two other things. When we were playing, though, me and Scrub actually discussed a little, where we said it'd be really great if there was some way that when you're on the server browser, you could see how long that server's round has to finish. Because again, even when things are rolling over, you might want to just be able to choose to go in at the start of a round rather than come in like when it's only have 1/3 left of a round. Is there any plans to maybe sort of implement that on the server side, so that when you click on a server to the right, it just displays like, you know, this much time has elapsed, or, you know, this many points are left to capture on this play, or sort of anything like that you think that would be good to do?
Actually, it would be good. I never thought of it. There are no plans. Again, we are a small team, so resources quite valuable for us. We have to think of who is doing what, because we don't have that many people around. So it is a good idea, but sadly, it sounds like something that will go in the wish list.
Yep, cool. Also, in Squad right now, obviously you can search servers by name, and that isn't a thing. Is that something you guys could put in? Because that obviously helps a lot in terms of just trying to, you know, find who you're playing with and so on.
Yeah, our lobby right now and the server browser is very rough. It was just good enough for you guys to find a server if you managed to see it, but we need to work some more on that. But that just wasn't a priority.
Yeah, there's still a bit of work to be done with the UI in terms of in-game and the server browser as well.
It's just when we went from A10 to A11 with the off-world core content, is a lot changed in terms of UI, and so much things changed in the game that we've spent all our resources to work in the game and not in the server browser. So when we finished what we wanted to have in the game, then we just had like a few days left to spend on the main menu. So like we did everything we could in that time frame.
Another thing that I found was, comparing to some other FPS games, I was finding that when ADSing and trying to find targets at kind of like a solid distance away, I'd often find that the reticule it almost felt like a little sticky, like, you know, when you're trying
like
to grid. Yeah.
Yes, that's a known problem. I don't know if you tried, there is a new parameter in the option. It is just below the mouse sensitivity. There is something like subdivide the overall sensitivity when you are in ADS by time 1 or time 4. I personally, it's not something we've made, it's something Off-World made, and I personally use that, and it makes quite a big of a difference as a sniper.
If that makes so much big of a difference, would you not maybe consider putting that by default? Or
actually, I was thinking that yesterday, because I showed it to some of our guys internally, because we are 2 different teams, and like, oh, I didn't know about that, and I didn't either. I was just looking like, oh, that's new. So you see, we don't exactly know everything that's going on. So when we get a new version, we have to figure what changed, and we have to make sure that, oh, that can be useful to us, and that's not useful, let's remove it.
There was also in the conversion to A10 to A11, there was a post-process effect that wasn't removed when you aim down sight, because obviously we only have one scoped weapon, so the post-process effect was on that, but it was also on the iron sight aiming, so you had like chromatic aberration, a bit of blur. We saw that, and now we've removed it, so hopefully visibility when you're aiming down sight is a bit clearer as well from here on out.
Okay, so let's get into some of the actual feedback and little elements that I felt from the playtest weekend. There's some really specific stuff, but let's start off with MSPs, because it's a pretty big discussion point, and at the end of the day, it's your guys' vision, so ultimately you guys get to make the call on how you want these things to play out. But a large amount of people that I spoke to, and that just I was playing with and around other squad leaders and stuff like this, really were feeling like people that were just normal squad members grabbing MSPs, putting them where they couldn't spawn from, driving them around. it was becoming quite a big problem after a couple of days play, to the point where people were starting to lose it, including me, because you would the commander would either instruct where you want your MSP, or you as a squad leader would be telling people like, okay, let's get it here because you can see what's going on the ground, and then only for Johnny McDonut to grab it and drive it either straight into the point or get it wasted or whatever, one thing of those, along the line. So can we potentially see something like in squad where they have to be approved for ordinary members, only squad leaders or other things along these lines can utilize them? Or have you guys already got some plan in place for how this is going to work out? Because obviously without the squad leaders being able to put down like rally points, the MSPs are so vital. It feels like there needs to be some kind of protection for such a vital mechanic for the entire team.
Yeah, well, the MSP, there are a few things we are missing. So what we are doing right now is we are changing the icon on the minimap. So it will, instead of being that little square with a wheel and 2 arrows pointing down, it's going to be a rectangle with, say, MSP right on it. So there is no excuse. So if I'm a section member and I'm not aware of the game and someone tell me, hey, you are moving the MSP, I open my map and I see that I'm the one driving the MSP, so it's going to help. Personally, I'm against the lock/request that is in squad. I personally don't like it, so I don't think we're going to go that route. And one thing we want to add on top is some sort of radius. So if I'm driving the MSP, there will be a radius around the flag, like a red radius, and that will tell me like if you go in that region, you won't be able to have your MSP to work.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's your call, but that seems very, very optimistic. I can understand the not wanting to have restrictions so that it, enables people to get involved and do stuff that they want to, but it did seem like a very, very common thing where people were just grabbing it. Now, obviously, this was kind of like the playtest weekend, and like you say, I can understand as well that a lot of new people, they don't understand what's going on, but I think also just as gamers, we know there is quite a decent amount of people who just never listen, never involve themselves with comms. I guess my final question on this point would be, is this something that you'd be happy to keep open and later down the line potentially look at if you felt like it was just something which was becoming an ongoing issue?
For us, we need more than a weekend playtest to define it to be an ongoing issue. So
for sure,
if it is an ongoing issue after 3 months, then yeah, something is wrong. But for now, there are no plans on changing at least the base mechanic. It's just going to be visual aid on top to just tell you like, yeah, this is the MSP, this is the radius you can go in, and we'll see how it goes from there.
Well, even by the end of the 3 days of the playtest, we were finding people were understanding the game a bit more. They played it for a few hours, and I was jumping into games and MSPs were actually being moved properly. And obviously, like you said, there is an issue of, just people on the internet.
There is also one thing. There's one more thing to add on that subject is, if you look at squad, for instance, I mean, this is our closest similar game, is if you look what we had during the weekend, because we had so many players around, we had to have a lot of servers, and a lot of servers were actually provided by external providers like Nitrado, Zap Hosting, and Bluefang. And what happened is those servers were not administrated because we just didn't have the manpower to administrate all those servers. But if you look at squad right now, or on a Saturday night when it's the peak of players, all the servers are community servers, and usually those people, they play all the time, so you have like experienced people. So yeah, that's why we don't want to take the weekend playtest as the benchmark of what's going to happen in the game.
Well, especially with a niche game like us, and the fact that the community and the community servers are so important, you have to sort of think that the community are going to be the biggest force, sort of helping newer players and sort of enforcing things like, the big rules like the MSP and stuff like that. So it's not like in, say, Battlefield, where you have thousands and thousands of servers. Some of them, like we said, unadministrated, and some are. But the game is the core concept is really very simple, and you can sort of do your own thing. But because the community servers of PS are going to be so important and, the most populated.
But yeah, it's not like we're never going to change our mind. But like we discussed earlier today, is we have our vision. We want to completely fulfill it and then take it from there. And our vision is not yet complete.
Can we talk a bit in general around sort of team play and also the squad leaders? I mean, from some conversations I'd had, we've been talking about, should there be some option to, like, if you join into a squad and there's a guy there who's just not doing anything, you can vote a new squad leader in, or we were talking about, could you even consider something along the lines of restricting opening for new squads? Because that was another thing we found. You'd join in on rounds and there'd be like, of course you always encourage people to fill in squads, but I joined several rounds through the weekend where you'd come in and there'd be like 1.5 squads and then 4 groups of people playing as like 2. We already have class restrictions. Do you think we need to go down the route of restricting opening of new squads where
I think we know why there were so many 2s sections is because people wanted the STG or they wanted the MP40 or the Sten. So they were just creating, because I've been told, I haven't said it myself, but I've been told that someone joined a section and say, hey, what's the plan? And the guy's like, I don't want to be section leader, I'm just here for the weapon. Now, if you are a section leader for the British, you have the Lee Enfield by default, and you need at least 4 people in your section to be able to get the Sten.
Okay, so that's like a good resolution onto that one.
Yes, I mean, personally, even when I can take the Sten, I always go for the Lee Enfield. I like that little zoom factor and the fact that I can one-shot people.
Sure. So you think that will remove the issue of people making new squads of just 1s and 2s?
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
One way to find out. We don't have absolute truth, and we can't. There is also one thing that we're joking about a lot internally is we can't dumb down the game for that certain amount of players on public servers. They just come here to fuck with everyone.
Yep, that's fair enough.
We can't just like overlock the game. So we're gonna try a few things and see how it works. And if it's working, then yeah, let's not fix it. And if it's not, then we'll do something about it.
So a lot of my comments on YouTube had been, it was pretty mixed, I think 50-50. There was a lot of people saying they had an amazing experience, but then there was plenty of other people saying that they, having a nightmare, couldn't find any teamwork, couldn't find any squads that were working together. Gotta say, that wasn't really my experience. I mean, when I played, I was jumping in and out of just different servers, jumping in and out of different squads. Sometimes I would squad lead, sometimes I'd play with other people. But in regard for teamwork, have you guys seen, what's your kind of, I guess, overall takeaway from this weekend when it comes to team play? Are you worried about the team play? Because a lot of people that were commenting from my videos saying like, I really couldn't find any team play and that was a big problem for me. But like I say, for me, I don't think that's the case. But is that anything that you guys are worried about? Were you happy to see, generally speaking, like how things played with regard to team play?
Well, about that, I'll say something very, the kind of thing you would see on television is be the community you want to have, and that's I hate that kind of cheesy thing, but that's what it is. Scriptum, it's not an everyone's game. It's not a game for everybody. It's very hard. It's punishing. It's slow. There is not action all the time. So one point is if you find only bad people, maybe you are on the wrong server, or I don't know, but we're not changing the vision of the game to accommodate the casual players. Everyone is welcome, but there is a way to play the game, and people have to go along, I guess.
I think there'll become a point where, people know what Postscriptum's about. It's, like you said, very punishing, very hardcore, but people, I think we're hoping, well, at least I'm hoping that after a certain amount of time, after a few months after release and everything, people understand that the way to enjoy the game is to engage in it and engage in its players, and make sure the teamwork aspect is, even when you and I were playing Luton, yeah, okay, a few servers would jump in, not a lot was going on in terms of communication, but then every 2 or 3 games it would be magic, like that last game we had on Driel, where the whole team was pushing the last flag, and before that, we just managed to really roll through and work together well. So it's just a case of time, the server you're on, I suppose, which is just, it's not ideal, but
it's, usually what I do is I use the analogy of, personally, when I started gaming in the late 90s, I've started with some game like Half-Life and Counter-Strike. It was 1.3, I think, at the time, in all those games, and I couldn't imagine any other kind of game. I haven't heard of Operation Flashpoint yet, and one day I discovered Red Orchestra, or even before Battlefield 1942. It's, I just discovered something new and something I had no idea it exists. So if we can get some of those people from, could be War Thunder, could be from the Battlefield community, or even from the Call of Duty community, they could discover something new, something more demanding. There is a good feeling about, like, I was really bad at that game 2 days ago and now I'm getting it. So it's just not a game for everyone, but I'm pretty sure we can get some new people to just discover that kind of game with us.
Command stuff, let's just talk about that really briefly. I did actually play a whole round as command, which was because I wanted to try it out, and it was actually really good, really satisfying, especially because I ended up in a round with like at least 2 squads which were really listening and communicating, and that was great. You know, a couple of small things, and I expect these are probably already in the works, but just as command, being able to put down, for example, like move orders specifically, like, you know, more kind of tactical markers on the map, like I want you to come in through this route, or I want you to rally here, or you know, or specific, almost be able to put like squad numbers where you want them to go and stuff like that. And then when calling in strikes, that you would actually get a marker. There was a couple of times where I played and there was like another guy commanding, and his strikes were just consistently all over the place because he was just not getting it right. Because I think when you right click and you can't see where that strike's coming in, it, you know, it loses a few people, I think. So yeah, just around markers for commanders and stuff like that, and general interaction. Any changes planned there that are already worked out, or something you want to look at?
The commander, as you know it right now, is the first iteration, so it's not finished. So as you may have seen, if you are a section leader or a commander, you have the green markers for your section mates. So the green markers, no one else can see them except your section mates. Then you have the blue markers that are team markers, and we are going to make a new set of markers that are going to be yellow, and those yellow markers are the markers from the commander.
And then the other thing I wanted to ask in regard to markers, right now they often disappear after a little while. I still think that's a good thing to leave on there, for sure. But I think it was like the enemy markers, they didn't do that, or they took a little longer or something. So is that all kind of working as you wanted to, or is there going to be some system where you can remove your own markers? You don't obviously want to be able to remove other people's, because that could lead to issues as well, people just messing around. But yeah, anything related to that that's going to be altered?
Yes, at the moment, the way you drop a mark and it fades out, so you know how recent that mark is. That's going to stay. That's exactly how we want it to be. It's like if I see the infantry, and a lot of people didn't realize there is a little clock. So when you select infantry, you can use it on the clock and tell the direction you saw those guys going. I've seen a few servers using it, but most of the time just people don't know about it. Yeah, so there's a little, if you select infantry, there's a little clock and you just decide the bearing you want that marker to be set.
It's the same as the compass thing for changing the direction of the strafe rounds.
The plane, yeah, it's exactly the same. So we do that. So if you see a vehicle, you can say, I've seen that vehicle here and it was moving that direction. So it's really good for the tank crews. So we can tell that the tank was moving from east to west or whatever. So that's one thing, and then the mark is going to fade. So if you see like it's 50% opacity, you know that it was quite a few minutes ago. So that is going to stay. And what we want to do is something similar to Arma 3, is you mouse over a mark and you press delete and your mark is gone.
A really small but very specific issue actually from one of the rounds. So basically the I actually forget the name of it, but the round with the big bridge crossing the river to start with.
Driel.
Yeah, Driel. Yeah. Quite often there was a lot of we played some rounds, and there were people who would later on in the round report that people would like driving vehicles up there, deliberately blocking the bridges and then blowing them up and stuff. Is that like a known? I mean, I think as well people know that you can drive through the river, but
no, they can't. I changed it last night, so well, you can try next time, but you'll have a bad time.
But yeah, anything you're going to do to sort of sort that, or is it kind of even, you know, if people take the trouble?
That's one thing, is you see when you try internally, you know, every play testers and everyone is playing a role play and hardcore, so you get realistic. You don't know those kind of grief and, you know, those. It's fun. I mean, that's the thing, is if you can do it, people will just overdo it. So we have.
Well, I mean, that's what the playtests are for, so we can find these little things out and then, you know, make little quality of life updates.
All those exploits, it's really hard to find. There are people who are really into in that mindset to find all the exploits. So that's what's going to happen, and that one was already planned. It's just we hadn't got the time to do it. Is you'll be able to blow up wrecks. So if you go by your wreck and you use a TNT, and then you're just going to explode that wreck, and then you can cross. Or if you use your shovel, it's going to take way longer, but then you can deconstruct wrecks and remove them out of the way.
And talking about destroying things, we can transition to talking a little bit about armor. We'll get on to talking about the tanks a little, but right now, of course, you do have you know, some AT systems to destroy tanks, and those are pretty effective. Is there any plan to add to any class a kind of more sort of engineer, sort of, you know, satchel charge element that would be able to, for example, sneak up to a tank and then lay down a charge?
There is the sapper in your section, and that guy is equipped with a 3 kilo TNT charge. And the TNT is powerful, trust me. I've seen a few videos online of people like, they run away, they turn back to see the explosion, and they just get blasted by the shockwave. So no, that thing is super powerful.
Will that pretty much like take down all tanks, or are there any tanks which will sort of say outlast that?
Yeah, 3 kilo of TNT is going to take any tanks.
So let's go on to the armor and the tanks. So is that all working as intended right now? Again, some people were talking about, I saw some comments from people on my videos talking about, you know, the values didn't seem quite correct on some of the vehicles. Probably, I think, more likely the German tanks. People always seem to be on point with their knowledge about German tanks. Is that kind of working as you wanted? I think those sort of values and those systems were implemented pretty recently, weren't they?
There are two factors on that exact thing. The first factor is going to sound really bad, and it's actually not. There is the armchair general factor. It is, I played 5,000 or whatever hours to War Thunder or War of Tank or whatever game you want, and you think you know everything. That's one factor, and I don't know everything. I'm actually not very knowledgeable about it. So we have a system that we are working on, and we've used every single realistic values. And if it's not going through, then or the code is wrong, or it's just didn't go through. So there is that one thing is those people who play too much of War Thunder or World of Tank, they just, you know, think, or because that one game that is specialized on exclusively tank damage is of course going to do it better than we do, because this is our first game. This is the first time we try something like this, and they expect the same level of quality as a company that is doing this for 5 years or maybe more.
Communications, generally speaking, all is very well with communications. Now, two things. One is the muting issue, because of course you have some problematic people or people that will just not shut up, and of course you can just go into the menu and mute those people right now. But I'm not entirely sure. Like, I think that mutes them in some channels, but not others. I don't know if it's...
Yeah, it was fucked. I wasn't muting people because I had no issues, but I've been people reporting me that you can mute someone, and after X amount of time, the mute is just gone. Yeah. So I think that's something that may have changed from A10 to A11, and we just didn't notice it. So what we do is, it's a trial by fire. Is we upgrade and we hope for the best, and we just figure what is breaking one thing after the other. So that is one of those breaking things, and that actually brings me to another problem. I don't know if it's one of your questions. It's something we are going to work on. Is, let's say I'm in the tank, I'm driving, and the gunner is an ass, is talking shit, and he's really bad. I want to kick him off my section. You can kick him out of the section now, but he will remain in your vehicle unless he decides to get out. So what we want to do is, you can lock your section like you would in squad, or we want to do something like, if you've been kicked, then you go back to a regular rifleman, and if you're a regular rifleman, you're just going to get kicked out of that vehicle.
Yep, that sounds pretty good. And again, that's quite a strong thing to implement, actually. I think there'd be some people who would be interested by that. So yeah, I think it's a good thing to put into there.
That's the thing, is when you start developing a game, you don't think of the asshole factor. That is something you think about it when the game is released and those assholes get access to the game.
Yeah, and again, just in relation to kind of noise and communication, this is a bit more of a producer-streamer question, but end of round, do you think there would even be an audio setting that you could implement on like the actual settings board, where it's like mute all at end of round, so that as you get to the end of the round, it just globally mutes everybody else? Because that's definitely something that I found when streaming, is you get to the end of the...
It's annoying. Yeah, I know what you mean. I think it will be at the very top of the scoreboard. So because let's say that one game was good and the next one is shitty, you may not want to always... I like that GG. You're like, oh fuck, you did that. That was really good. Who did that? So I think we should keep that default. And if someone is starting to troll at the top, like there is a button like mute all, and that's end of story, and that will reset onto the next game.
Let's talk a little bit about weapon sway. Now, again, I think it's actually, because everybody's on the level playing field, I therefore feel it's fairly balanced. But I think a few times when I was in rounds, you would often feel like, for God's sake, the weapon is swaying quite a hell of a lot. Do you feel like that's where you want it to be, or is there, some room for, calming that down a little bit? It often was feeling to me a little bit like some of the previous versions of Armor, where you run forward like 5 meters, and then the guy is literally just like having a heart attack, swinging his weapon all over the place. And sometimes I was getting that on the streams where, people were being like, oh man, what's up with your aim? You're all over the place. And it's like, like, no, you don't understand. Like, I physically cannot control the fact that my weapon is like going left to right all over the place. And again, of course, you want there to be some penalty for sprinting all the time, and that's why you have a stamina system in the first place. But do you think there's any room there for calming that down a little bit or something?
I would have to try it again, because I like to punish people. If they run too much, then you are exhausted and you will have a hard time aiming ahead. But a lot of things changed recently in the update, so maybe it's not where it was. You should be swaying quite a lot if you are in that lower third of your stamina bar. If you are like halfway through that bar or on the upper half, you should have almost no sway. So if you do, then that's actually a mistake, and I will have another look at it today.
Let's get into some of the cool newer stuff which is coming up, like the Airborne and the 30 core and all this kind of stuff. Can you guys lay out some of the things which haven't been implemented, whether it's related to these factions or other things in the future? I mean, one thing that I will say as well is I really enjoyed my experience, but I definitely feel like we need a couple more maps. And I definitely understand as well that you guys are a small team, but I think in terms of just long term going forward, I feel like that's something that which will be needed. Is there any scope, for example, for opening up maps and stuff in terms of modding for people and things along those lines as well? So can you talk about new stuff which is coming up which we haven't seen yet, and also I guess scope for ensuring there is enough longevity to keep things interesting?
Yes, at the moment we have, during that weekend we released 3 maps, and each maps had 3 layers. So that is the thing, is it's taking us a lot of time to do one map. Like, it's 16 square kilometers, so it is a lot of work to get those set dressed and ready. Because it is so expensive, because it is all about the money. I mean, there is one thing that is for sure, it's about the money. It is very expensive to do one map. So what we're going to do is, now you've seen 3 layers, but we want to do like 20, 30, 40 layers per map. So you're going to go in every direction. It's never going to be the exact same, but we can't just go for another 10 maps. It's just not doable with our resources. So in order to have the longevity, what you were discussing about is layers, different gear on each map. So sometimes you have a Tiger on that layer, and sometimes you have a Panther 3 or just Armored Recon. So that's one thing for the longevity. And then we will add some new game modes. So we'll have the sandbox game mode, which is going to be the admin or one commander. You decide what units you have, and you decide on the fly where the objectives are. So if you are a community that is just perfect, it's like, hey, let's make that house the objective, because I never played in that layout. So as for the Airborne element, we were not able to actually have it done for that playtest. It is a very complex task, and you'll be able to see the entire map from the plane. So we have to go very, very hardcore on the optimization. So you'll be able to jump out of C47 for the release. So at the beginning of every game, based on what map you're on, you'll be able to start. You will respawn inside the plane with all your teammates. You'll wait for the green light, then you will stand up, put your, the zip line, you will walk toward the door, and then you'll jump all the way down to the ground without any loading time or nothing. That is something that is coming in the next few weeks. I don't have a release date yet for that, but it is coming.
Sounds super exciting.
Oh yes, yeah. I mean, yeah, that's possibly, with the tanks, it's possibly the thing I'm looking forward the most.
Yeah, it's one of the things I'm really looking forward to working on as well. Not
because
just playing.
That's the thing is, we're doing it is something I say a lot on Discord, is we're not doing the game for the public, we're doing the game for us. So if we like it, then that's how the game is going to be. So it sounds a bit like a dick move. It's like, yeah, we do what we want. So that's the game we want. We're going to do it that way. So it is
if
very
you start
exciting.
Developing a game that you don't want to play yourself, then what's the point?
True, very true. Yep.
It often worries me actually when I speak to developers and they're just like, oh, we're so busy developing, we barely get any time to play the game. And it's like, what?
Fuck that.
That's
like... No, I mean, how many hours you play Scrub this weekend?
Well, I did about 14 on Saturday, and then 14, a couple on Sunday, and then I was burnt out by then.
Yeah,
but that's the thing. It is our game. It's what we want to play. So yeah, no, it's not. Like we've said to a lot of people, this is not a game for the money. If we were to do a game that's going to sell hundreds of thousands of copies, we would do something very, very different. That's what's sure.
Is there any plans that you want to basically continue creating stuff for this game, or once you release, is it like we're done, we'll move on, or is that a decision which hasn't been made yet?
Oh, you know what? Actually, I can tell you exactly what's going to happen. No one knows, so you'll be the first one to hear about it. So here is, I'm going to tell you what we need to consider the game done. Then I'm going to tell you what we're going to do after that release. And that is going to be the game complete. And then we'll see if we do expansions like new theater and everything. We'll see if we have enough money in the bank to actually go for another theater, because again, it's all about resources. So in order to call the game complete, we have to finish the 40 versus 40 people on the server and to be stable. Of course, that's the first thing. Then we have to finish 4 maps, which is Driel, Hilsum, Oostebik, and Dowers. So you've seen 3 of those 4 maps, and that is going to include like 20 layers per map. So it's going to be a lot of variations. Then we want to finish the parachuting. We want to do the Steam localization. So we'll translate the game to many languages like French and Polish and so on and so on. So we have to do that first. We want to upgrade the main menu and the radial. When everything is done, all those things are done and we have a game more stable. I'm not saying bug-free because I don't believe we'll ever be bug-free. It doesn't exist, especially for indie games. But when all of this is done and we are stable enough, we'll consider the game done. And then we'll keep working on it for a few months. So we will do, of course, Arnhem, which is our big map. It's an 8 by 8 kilometer map with a big city in the center. It's that, in the north of it, with that famous bridge too far. So this one is going to be massive map. And I mean, we're working on it now. It looks absolutely stunning. It is going to be just mind blowing. So you guys will be able to see a bit more about this during the summer. Then we had 3 more maps for the US faction. We have Vegel, Grave, and Velmolen. So those 3 maps are going to come in for free. Again, everything post-release is for free. So if you buy the game for $30, everything I'm describing now is included. Awesome. Then we want to do the sandbox game mode we discussed before. So it is, you do whatever you want, you spawn whatever you want, wherever you want. And then we want to increase improve the vehicle damage model. So this is what we call VDM2. And this is going to be the possibility to destroy tracks and turrets and radiators and fuel tanks. And we add the US Airborne, and that's it. That is Postscriptum, the Bloody Sevens complete.
And then, so from that point on, then you would make a decision as to whether you want to, like I say, do a different theater or anything like that, you know.
Exactly. But everything we do post this is going to come at the cost. So the $30 is just covering what I explained before, and everything after will be with I don't like the DLC. I like expansion better, but in the end, it's the same thing.
So if you could do another theatre, let's just speculate here at the end. For both of you guys, for Bright or Scrub, are there any particular theatres which you guys find, or any factions or specific things that you guys find particularly appealing?
Scrub?
For me, North Africa, which is one that's talked about a lot, I think would be really interesting but the thing is, it would be a lot of work because all the assets would be completely different. Yeah. But North Africa for me, and not as one whole expansion, but I'd love to see, even in the modding community, I'd love to see a Bastogne map, Battle of the Bulge type thing, and somehow, have some sort of really cool effects if you have bombs coming down that like splinters all the trees and all that kind of stuff. Mainly because I want to work on the sound for it. So. But yeah, North Africa and the Battle of the Bulge for me.
And for Brian?
Well, me, I can't really answer because my answer is, if we were to do one, it's the one we're going to do. Yeah, I know what we want to do next. I don't know yet if we have the resource to actually do it. So
I think probably like something along the lines of Russian and Stalingrad, specifically.
Yeah, we get asked about that daily.
Expensive to do it. So expensive.
Yeah, I mean, it would be expensive. I mean, you can just imagine all the urban stuff, and then you've got like the classic river crossings and all these kind of stuff. There's so many different elements you could do in there.
That would be amazing
and the
for sure.
Stuff.
Yeah, I don't think 8 people are enough to actually do a proper we're not talking about that your everyday shooter in a 500 meter square map. We're talking about 8 by 8 kilometer maps. So doing Stalingrad would be massive.
Go down the Wake Island route, get Wake Island in the mix, stuff like that. Classics.
Well, once we release our modding kit, you can do whatever you want, really.
It's true. The SDK is going to open a lot of doors, like it did for many other games out there.
Yeah. So is this basically going to be just fully moddable, or is it restricted to sort of maps and so on and so on?
Well, it'll be pretty much the same as the squad.
Exactly the same, actually. Exactly the same. No C++ access, but everything else.
Yes, you can make factions, weapons, sounds, maps,
We've
game modes.
back in the days where we were a mod, we went quite far in development with the squad SDK. So you don't really need a C++ unless you want to create some crazy new features. But if you just want to do mods or just, let's say, a new faction, you don't need anything else.
Release date.
Well, that one is, I'm going to be very, very straightforward about that question, is we don't know. Because as most of you guys seen, you play the game, it's good, a lot of people love where we are going, but it is just not ready. Let's face it, and it's not usually the kind of thing a developer would say. It's just not ready, it's not good enough, the optimization is not there, we are missing key features. So what I listed before is what we want and the stability. When we have this, then we'll tell you when the game is going to be released. There is no point speculating, because I can tell you it's going to be the 21st of June. I just literally don't know. No, that's the thing, is people, they like to know, which actually it makes sense. You'd like to know, but I just don't know. We don't know. It's genuine as can be. It's $30. I know for some people $30 is a lot. It depends the country you're living in. Well, the price is adjusted on Steam, but think of it the other way around, because we are used to being fucked literally by big studios or even small studios with poor products, and that's the truth. So buy the game, make your own opinion. If you don't like it, then yeah, fair. We knew when we started Postscriptum that game was not for everyone. That is more than obvious. But if you're just disappointed by the optimization, just give us a chance, wait a bit, and if it's still not good, then yeah, just refund the game. But again, we are an 8-people company. We are super small. We are working on our dream game. Personally, I know it's the same with Crub and everyone. I work 17 hours a day, 7 days a week for the past 2 years. So yeah, just try to not think of us as your big corporation trying to get a lot of money out of it. This is absolutely not the truth. If we make a lot of money out of it, yeah, I'm fine with the idea. Don't get me wrong. But this is our dream game. This is nothing else but this.
I think that's a really good place to leave it, guys. Thanks so much for your time today.
Yeah, no problem.
It was good.